In today's video, I want to talk about reusing some of the parts that came with the Eastwood air control pedal. If you guys followed the vapor blasting build that I'm using and you purchased the Eastwood air pedal kit, it would have come with this sandblasting gun, right? Now, the issue with using a gun like this for vapor blasting is that the hoses are going to be in your way, because you got the media hose would be on the bottom, and then the air hose would be on this side, and then they also include a hook to hook this up on the top of the cabinet, which I never use the hook. For me, the hook is more in my way than anything else. Anyhow, up until this point, this thing has just been sitting in my parts bin, hasn't done much for me at all. But what I decided to do is play around and experiment with some of these parts. And I also took a look at the design of the gun itself. So we're going to reuse this collar. And then this particular one comes with a 6mm ceramic nozzle. So I think maybe we can reuse this as well. And then if you take a look inside, it brings an O-ring. So we're going to fish that O-ring out of there. And if you guys want to experiment with something like this is actually something pretty cool, because these things do work for sandblasting and vapor blasting, both. You can use them for both purposes. And what I just did is I took measurements from this working unit. I measured the diameter of this opening, measured the outside diameter, measured the distance of the air jet from the end of the where the gasket sits, the O-ring sits, measured the diameter of the circle inside and the gap between it and the air jet. And what I came up with is a pretty cool, more compact version of something like this. And it'll give us an opportunity to reuse some of those parts and play around with it. So let me show you what I came up with. So here's a 3D designed and printed version of that nozzle. Let me turn on the torch so you guys can see inside. So there's the inside of it. It's got the same dimensions as the Eastwood sandblasting nozzle. And then one thing that I tried to do initially when I built the first prototype, I tried to incorporate these fittings onto the body of this, but it's not robust enough. As soon as you start clamping down on the hose and you really crank down on it and tighten it to get a good seal, you wind up compromising these little plastic pins if you make them out of plastic. So what I decided to do is, let me see if I can take this off. It's loose enough for me to take one off. Yeah, this one can come off. So what I did is I created the 3D model with a bore that's the bore size needed for tapping with a 1/2-inch tap. And then I went ahead and I tapped it with a 1/2-inch tap to be able to accept the 1/2-inch to PEX adapter. So this will just screw in here right here like this. And just snug it up. Doesn't have to be crazy tight because we're not running insane pressures on this. And then the O-ring, we can reuse the O-rings. We can take the original O-ring from the Eastwood gun, stick it in here, push that down in there. See, as you can see, the O-ring fits in there. And then we could take the original Eastwood ceramic nozzle, drop it in there, and then reuse the collar as well. And if you want to play around with different diameter openings, what we can do is 3D print these little inserts. So this one is a 6mm. I was using an 8mm originally, and currently I have a 10mm on the nozzle that's in the cabinet. But let me go ahead and connect this up in the cabinet, and we'll see if we can clean up a part using this 3D printed model. And if you guys are interested in this, I'll leave a link to the STL file. If you guys have a 3D printer, you guys can print one up yourself and let me know how it works for you. One more thing that we'll be changing out in the cabinet today is the gloves. The gloves that come with the Harbor Freight cabinet are terrible. They're poorly made. They start to leak relatively quickly after you start using them, and the hand size is very small. So these are a size 10.5. They are 12-inch, and the cuff size is supposed to be 7-inch. We'll see. It looks a little big to me, but we'll see if it's the correct size to fit on the Harbor Freight unit. Another thing I want to do is invert the rings that hold the gloves in place, because right now all the hardware for the glove is inside the cabinet. It's exposed to the media, it's exposed to humidity, and it's starting to rust and it's starting to have problems. So I'm going to go ahead and invert it. I'll put the decorative side towards the inside of the cabinet, and then leave the side where you fasten the glove on the outside of the cabinet. It's not going to look as pretty when you're looking at it from the outside, but from the inside perspective, it's not going to gather media, and the parts are not going to rust. If you guys are interested in purchasing these same gloves, these particular ones came from a company called Cyclone Manufacturing. They specialize in sandblasting equipment and accessories. I'll put the link to these particular gloves in the description of the video. That way, if you guys are interested in upgrading your Harbor Freight gloves to all rubber ones, you can save some time by going right to the source that I'm using. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll test out this nozzle along with it. Let me show you what's going on with these gloves, why I want to invert the collar that's holding them. So if you look here on the inside, if you notice, it's getting all these bolts, they rust. And another thing is it gathers media, a lot of media all around this metal ring. So to me, it doesn't make sense to have this hardware on the inside of the cabinet like this. I think it would be better if it was the other way around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I've seen some of the professional vapor blasting cabinet and sandblasting cabinets. They don't have their gloves set up like this. On the inside, it's very clean. You don't have any kind of hardware or anything that can trap media. So we're going to try to mimic the same thing that they're doing by just reversing the collar and facing it to the outside. It'll also make changing the gloves out real easy. If you needed to clean media out real well, you can simply unclasp the gloves from the outside without having to mess around on the inside of the cabinet. What we'll be using for the job is just a Phillips screwdriver and a small set of vice grips. We're going to start by taking the gloves out. One. Guys, get yourself a magnet to retrieve these Guys, do yourself a favor and make sure you put a cover over your bucket. That way, if you drop any screws like I did, I just dropped 3 washers into the bucket, that you don't have to fish them out like I'm going to have. I had to fish them all out. What a nightmare. Yeah, you don't want any of this stuff getting sucked up into your pump and jammed in any of your nozzles. I'm going to retap these because they're all rusted. So these are a 0.7, it's metric, and 4 millimeter. So 0.7 metric, 4 millimeter. So get yourself a tap and then a die for the little bolts. Let me clean these up. To clean up these bolts here, so these are the ones that hold the sleeves to the cabinet. So this size bolt is a 6 millimeter bolt, and it's 1.0. It's metric. And then the same thing with the nut. So what you're going to need is a tap and a die in 6 millimeter with a 1.0 pitch. So let's clean this up, and then we'll try to see what else we need. Let me show you what I had to do to invert that ring. There's an issue that I didn't count on, and that's this lip here. So this lip sticks out quite a bit. What I had to do is I had to go back to the yoga mat. I cut out 2 yoga mat rings, and then I reused the rubber ring that came with the glove holder. So that's the one that's up against the cabinet. The yoga mat is in between, and then I'm going to snug these down. Really, these bolts need to be a little bit longer. They just barely grab the nut, but I think it'll work. And anyway, I'll try it out. I'll let you guys know. And if this doesn't work out, what I may have to do is cut out a couple of plexiglass rings to take up this gap here, and then go and just use the gasket with some longer bolts. But anyhow, this is what it's looking like so far. I'm going to go ahead and button it up. We'll put the gloves in, and we'll try out the gloves, check them for leaks, and then the new nozzle. All I'm doing is tracing the outside of this ring. Next thing we're going to do is now trace the inside. So I'm just going to place this on top, make sure it's centered, and I'm going to trace the inside. Now we're just going to cut just outside of this circle. So about 1/8 of an inch outside of the circle. If it's good. And then we're going to use this ring. So this will give us our spacer. It's still squishy. Next, what we're going to do is punch some holes. So you can grab this. Have to line it up first. And once we get the first one going, setting up the other ones is quick and easy. All right, so here. This is what we want right here. All right, I'm going to do the rest of them. Okay, so we got them all on there. Now we're just going to move over to the cabinet and put it on. Once you find the first hole and you squeeze it down, the rest of them should line up. Like I said, guys, these screws are just barely long enough. I got one of the gloves test fitted on. Let me show you how easy it is to put on. Oh, one thing real quick here. Let me show you something. So this is what the Harbor Freight glove that comes with the cabinet looks like. As you can see, it's very small hand. For me, it was very tight, and I don't have huge hands. But as you can see, it doesn't take long for the gloves to develop little tears in them. And once they start to tear, they start to leak, and you get water inside your sleeve, and it's not fun. It's also shorter. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little, just very short, very thin material. These gloves are real thick. They're totally rubber. There's no seams on them. There's no sewn areas or anything like that. So this sleeve was sewn on, and then they hot pressed it to make sure it doesn't leak. All right, let me set you back up over here so you guys can see how easy it is to put the glove on. There you go. So just like that. And what I try to do is try to get it close to the, not right up against the end, because I want to have as much glove as possible inside the cabinet, but just enough to where the clamp will grab it. And you also want to make sure that your glove is facing the correct way. So I like to have the gloves a little bit like this. I don't want them like this. I want them just a little bit like this. That way, if I need to turn my hands, I have a lot of flexibility. See what it looks like on the inside. So there you go. I'm still not 100% happy with this double gasket setup. I think I'm gonna cut some plexiglass rings. That way, it's not squishy, and this thing can really tighten down. But anyway, I'm gonna try it the way it is. I installed the nozzle, so there's the new nozzle. This is the 3D printed one. It's got a 6mm orifice on it. Let me find a part that we can test it on, and we'll kick it on and try it out. Guys, this is about the crustiest thing that I could find. So this is a bearing from my timing belt setup in my Evolution. So this is an old one that I replaced a while ago. Let's clean this thing up. These gloves are huge. Did it work? Yeah, it did. It's a little slow because of the 6mm nozzle, but it does work. And that one was 3D printed. What I'll do is I'll include that file in the description. That way, if you guys have a 3D printer and you want to print up one, you can. Just remember that you have to tap the holes in the back with a 1/2 inch tap. It's a pipe tap, so it's not a standard tap, it's a pipe tap. Works pretty good. So I'll print up some 8 and 10mm nozzles for it. That way we can test it with the bigger openings. But it does work with the 6mm nozzle. It's just a little slow. And I'll improve on the design and update that link to that file as it gets better and better. Alright guys, if you like the content, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on your notification bells. And I appreciate all the support. Thank you so much. Leave me comments. I love reading the comments and responding. Till next time, guys. God bless.